Hey guys, Liana here. It's Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! Now, this was a good week in the fact that for the first time, and I'm very happy about this, my core video game content and my dialogue options video were outranked in terms of views. The pop culture or daily news elements of the channel, and I'm very, very excited about that because that is something I've been trying to have happen. It was incredibly frustrating that when I do something that was a core game concept, it wouldn't get the traffic I need to justify it. And then the dialogue options stuff is obviously a lot more labor intensive for everyone involved than anything else I do. So I'm really, really glad to see that build. That's very, very good for me because a lot of people are putting in, like, that's something I actually need help with, not just for the people that say yes to the interviews, but the person that sets them up. Thanks, Fajira. And my husband does the editing on, putting the fancy thing on the front and everything like that, because I don't have the capabilities of doing that. So I'm very, very glad that's building, and I'm glad it's catching on, because otherwise it's too labor intensive to keep going. So yay, that worked. And then the Anno 2205 video did surprisingly well. I wasn't sure how that was going to do because it was a PC only game. It's not a franchise that people are especially aware of, but people seemed quite interested in it. And then obviously the Tomb Raider video did okay as well. So this is very good. This is very, very good, because I'll tell you, I get tired of talking about, feminism and gender and all that stuff all the time. It's something that I'm interested in. It's something that I'm good at talking about, but I prefer to sort of have it one day a week. That's why I call Tuesdays Tatas Tuesdays. That's sort of the day of the week that I take sort of a women's issue because I know people are interested in it, and I isolate it to that day. And I do that so that it's not everything I'm about, because obviously I have other interests, the structure of games and theory, and I'm fascinated by ludonarrative, but I haven't really had traction on that stuff, and the reason for that is, unfortunately, and this was brought up to me when I used to work in music and I used to cover hip-hop, because personally I love hip-hop, and I genuinely wanted to promote it, but I was in the minority at the station, which was, more and more pushing towards pop music. No, I think some hip-hop is pop music. Pop music is just anything that's popular. But, the idea, the middle of the road, boy band, Spice Girls kind of thing, that's a dated reference, but, that's who was popular when I worked in music. But that sort of thing. And one artist, I think it was Cardinal Official, actually said to me during the interview, you guys, meaning the station, contact us when you want us to talk about being black, but when it comes to promoting our music, you're not there. And that has stayed with me to this day. And I understand his frustration now, because hey, people are more than happy to have me talk about being a woman, but just talking as an expert on games, I'm somewhat ghettoized. And that's that sort of identity thing that, first person narrative is so dominant when it comes to, these marginalized voices, TM, that we do get stuck in that sort of thing. And the other side of it and is that if you're not a representative of, for instance, I'm white, so I'm very uncomfortable talking about racial issues. I'll do interviews with someone so that they can talk about the experience of not being a white person. But I don't feel, even though, I have my own personal opinions on it, I don't feel like it's appropriate for me to talk about it in a public place. And that's sort of why when people are like, well, why do you identify as a feminist? Well, because it's the only first person narrative, culture, I can really participate in, because you know, I'm tired of hearing the you don't look Jewish thing. That's too pain in the ass, and I'm not gonna talk about, you know, religion's just one of those things you don't talk about, except in specific places. And you know, I'm not a person of color, and I've been married for a long time now, you know. So this whole idea of, you know, sexual orientation and gender identity and all that stuff, even though being married doesn't actually mean anything when it comes to how you define your sexual identity, I'm shut down whenever I have to try to have a discussion about that. And then, you know, of course, it's the whole thing is the equivalent of if you're childless and you try to talk about children and parenting and the role and responsibility of parents, you get the, do you have children? As if there's some mystical knowledge that descends on you the minute you pop out a kid. And, but I understand that people feel very strongly about these things, and so I don't touch on them. I can talk about being a woman, and I think I can bring that to the table. I think it's valid. I think it's important. And I know what my experience has been feeling what we call othered in that way. And I feel that very acutely because I'm, you know, a female gamer, which I don't think should be relevant, but it is. You know, in the 1980s, it was still okay to say you play like a girl, you know, and there's this whole idea that the default gamer, and you know, we've been dealing with this, and the progressive wing of gaming is quite comfortable to associate the gamer identity with white, heterosexual, cisgendered men. So the progressive wing of gaming is leaving me out of the discussion of the definition of a real gamer. That blows my mind. And so that's part of the reason, among other things, that I'm very interested in women's issues. The other big thing that I haven't been able to talk about too much because it hasn't been relevant in gaming, there just aren't enough women in gaming for this to be relevant, is the way women sabotage other women. And when I worked in music, this was a major, major thing. And why am I talking about this? Because this video sparked a lot of controversy. A lot of people got very angry because it was a reaction. I admit it was a reaction, and I do these videos every so often knowing that it's going to upset some people. But that's because people don't like admitting they're wrong. And when people make utterly ludicrous statements, when people continue to deal in hypotheticals, when facts are available, when they're what-ifing, when we actually have data, that drives me crazy. And I've been accused of being disrespectful in this issue, and I will fully admit I have been disrespectful. Because when there is data and it to deal with a hypothetical, I do not feel required to respect your position. And so that's one of those things where I know, according to girl code or girl world, I'm supposed to apologize for being disrespectful. But you know what? Fuck that. Because I'm also a reasonable, thinking, intelligent person. And I don't have to buy someone's fairy dust when I have red meat in front of me. And that's, yes, I am being exceptionally disrespectful to the people who badmouth the decisions made in this cabinet. And I've been validated by that since the whole thing happened, since the whole blow up on Twitter happened. Because, you know, you walk around the streets. I met some friends for drinks the other day, and everybody was like, wow, isn't this an amazing day? And, you know, I visited my friend in the hospital and you know, recovering from spinal surgery. Hi, Dre. And he's like, isn't this amazing? Everybody is amazing. Everybody's like, this is amazing. People are talking about what a badass our new defense minister is, and the fact that our transportation minister is an astronaut. And in Canada, the vast majority of people in the real world, the people I encounter in meat space, think this is an incredible thing. It's an amazing day. And why? Because it goes back to this concept that people want to feel like government is made up of people like them. And if you continue to send the message to 50 to 51% of the population, that number's a little bit in dispute, that they are only worthy of 30% of the positions. It was, it was around there. It was, because okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. But, you know, when an equal amount of the population is told you have to settle for a minority of the jobs, that's not equality. And I know people start shrieking about equality of opportunity, but you know what? Versus equality of outcome. And they say, now you want equality of outcome. No, I don't. I want a fair chance. However, my concept of a fair chance is based on the belief that women are just as good as men in everything except peeing standing up and, you know, having a prostate exam. There are certain things where we don't have the body parts, so we can't do it. But in any intellectual endeavor, including politics, including the law, including medicine, women are just as good as men. And that means that because I believe that, I would expect to see proportional representation based on that. Now, that is the same for people of color, gay people. You know, the question that comes up a lot with this cabinet thing is, do we have a gay cabinet minister? Yes, we do. Scott Bryson is gay. But it's funny because it's been this run-on thing. We're actually all going through the checklist. And that's not because we're big on affirmative action here in Canada. It's not that. It's when you live in a city like Toronto that is so multicultural and is so diverse in terms of gender identities and sexual orientations and things like that. The quote-unquote special interest groups are not an other. And that's a concept by Simone de Beauvoir that I will address when I do my feminism primer, which I don't have time to do right now because I'm a game reviewer. But these people aren't the other. They're our friends. They're part of our circles of people we care about, which is an extension of self. And that is the amazing thing about living in a city like Toronto. And this is something I don't know that people who live in less diverse places can understand. But what I think we can avoid is being so offended or so angry or so frightened by this idea that this is a quota and this is affirmative action. And the unfortunate thing is, no matter how much I show that these people are qualified, no matter how much I present the actual evidence that we have on this particular issue, on this cabinet, I can go through the bios of every single person there, and I still have people telling me I'm supporting quotas. Now, when it hits that point, and when people are trying to counter my facts with hypotheticals, you know, I'm not going to take them seriously, and I'm not going to apologize for that. And people got very mad at me for one comment where I asked somebody, are they always this angry? And it was because I felt like they were going, well, I'll show you the comment. I'll show you the comment, and I'll tell you my thought behind it. How does voter numbers translate to women wanting to work in politics? It just doesn't. I will admit that offended me, because how do voter numbers translate to women wanting to work in politics? I didn't say that. I said women are politically active. Gender parity can be damaging in either direction. What? I was one of the people who messaged you yesterday, and I wasn't suggesting that Canada's government is now shit. I was suggesting that basing government structure on anything except pure merit is foolish. I'm not interested in who they are because I wasn't making judgments about them. Well, if you're judging the situation, pal, you are making judgments. If you're judging the situation as a hypothetical and you have facts, you are ignoring the facts involving your opinion. And then my response was, define merit in politics. It's what the people want. This was an election issue. People voted for the Liberals, therefore parity has political merit. Also, you're still on about this when it's clear these people are qualified. Just how angry are you on a daily basis? Now, yeah, that was snarky, but, you know, I was responding to snark. This, I'm not interested in who they are because I'm not interested in who they are. That's a disrespectful statement. You know, the idea that women don't naturally want to work in politics is an annoying statement. Okay. Suggesting that basing government structure on anything except pure merit is foolish is an annoying statement, because the point I made in this video is these people do have merit. They are pure merit appointments. They are. It was the best people for the job. And sometimes that's a woman, and sometimes the Attorney General is now an Aboriginal woman, a First Nations woman, and she didn't get that job because she's a First Nations person. She did because she's a former Crown Attorney. And these people who are claiming to support merit are actually denying the merit in these people. So yes, I snarked, and yes, I was disrespectful, but oh man, people got mad. You know, come now, merit. And the people that jumped on me were quite funny. Is this incredibly disrespectful? Wow, uncalled for response to a perfectly civil comment. Really? Saying that I'm not interested in who they are is civil? Not in my world. And this is the interesting thing when we get into civility. People on the internet often confuse civility and coldness. And it's not the same thing. Logic without empathy tends to create bad results. And this is something that I will continue to do various things and come at issues in various ways to try to make people think. And in this case, I felt that anger and snark and just actually being disrespectful to this idea that because there's cabinet parity, the automatic assumption is that some people are not qualified. I don't feel like I have to be respectful to that, because as you know, our current government is saying, it's 2015. We should be beyond that. Now, there's more to this, and I understand it's complicated. And one of the things somebody asked me privately is if I was aware and prepared to talk about the downside of affirmative action. And I am aware of the problems with affirmative action. It's not a perfect system. I have had to, what's the word I'm looking for? I've been on both sides of the affirmative action negative coin. When I was applying to universities, I actually had to go to my third choice school because I couldn't afford my first choice school, and I couldn't afford my second choice school because, you know, I needed the best scholarship I could possibly get, because I had been turned down for many scholarships, because a lot of scholarships that were offered to me to apply to at the time were based on, you know, gender. And you know, they were affirmative action scholarships. Merit scholarships are very hard to come by. And I had the second highest grade point average in my school. But, you know, I didn't go to a private school. And because I didn't go to one of the quote-unquote better schools, those merit scholarships aren't involved. Universities want rich alumni. Okay, but because, okay, woman, that's a diversity point, but I kept losing, you know, need scholarships because I was white, and because on paper, my legal guardians made too much money. And why I say this is because right before I was about to apply to university, my mother remarried. And so they count, even though my parents kept their incomes separate. They had separate bank accounts. He paid for his kids' stuff. My stepdad did not pay for my education. It changed by the time my sister went around, because obviously, you know, the families blended more. But at first their agreement was my mom paid for her kids, my stepdad paid for his kids, because he was putting 3 kids through school as well. And so on paper, my parents combined made too much money, and they were expected, based on that, to be contributing a certain amount to my education. Well, no one can force a person's parents to do that, so I couldn't get those scholarships, and I didn't want to go and my parents actually made too much money for OSAP, which is the student loan program. So I'd have to go and get private loans with no credit rating, and parents were afraid of credit. I wasn't even allowed to get a credit card when I was applying to university. I had to sneak one behind my mother's back. I filled out an application when I was in school. Like, it was that sort of situation. So I got caught in that. I probably, if people knew the reality of my situation, I was the type of person that these programs are supposed to benefit, because my grades were ridiculous. I mean, I was a straight A student, near straight A plus student. I cut like 99s and 100s. My poor teacher had to be reviewed in one case because I got 100 in a course. And when you get a perfect score in a course, the teacher is automatically reviewed. They check everything. Like, that's how much of a freaking geek I was, okay? But under the current system, I wasn't being courted by any schools. Nobody was going, we want you. We want you in our program. You're the kind of student we want. Because everything's by the numbers. Everything is so massive. But then on the other hand, when I went into work, because I finally realized I didn't need a gender studies degree to go out and make the lives of people better. You know, I didn't need a cultural studies degree to appreciate culture. I had to go and learn about people's cultures. And so I just went and I started working. And I worked for free for 6 months. I worked my way up. Worked in rat-infested basements near the sewers, building sets and all that stuff. And I worked my way up. I did it what people would consider the old-fashioned way. And so, you know, I do have the fundamental courses. I have those backbone courses, but I can't throw a master's degree in anybody's face. But I think the education I learned on the job is more practical and more real than the stuff that's taught by politically driven institutions. Now, some people will disagree, and that is fine. That's why we have what I call academic feminism and what I call boots on the ground feminism. There are people who study this stuff, and there are people like me who live it. And both, there's a place for both. But we're going to come up with radically different results. And, you know, Gloria Steinem is an example of someone who isn't an academic feminist. She likes to tell other people's stories. And, you know, Gloria Steinem has made some comments that I find completely contradictory. But then I realized, you know what? That's fine. Because she isn't an analyst. She's a teller of stories. She collects stories and just, you know, she is one of the people that founded this first-person narrative concept that came from second wave feminism. But so when I went out to work, this idea, oh, you're a woman, and oh, you're young, and oh, you're, you know, a certain, because I was 19 when I started. I was 24 by the time I was management. And so people just assumed, oh, you must have, and in TV it's always, who'd you sleep with? Who'd you sleep with to get this job? And of course, you know, I worked with my, he was my husband by that time, when I was 21. I know the big feminist got married when I was 21. It's, yeah, but that's the whole thing. I don't find that a contradiction. That was my life. That was the right choice. I'm still married and I'm 37 years old. So obviously, you know, it was a decent call. But, you know, I was held back because of that, because the place I was in did have some mandates that insisted, because it was TV and it was a certain type of TV, and at the time, like, you guys have to understand how sleazy the TV industry was back then. I don't know how it is now, but man, it was sleazy. Like, the casting couch was a real freaking thing. And to get some of the stink off, they elevated some women to management jobs who didn't have the skills. And what they were really good at is stabbing people in the back and avoiding blame. But there are plenty of male executives like that as well. The problem is there were a lot more male executives than female executives. And it did cause a problem, because not only were people like, oh, they promoted this person because she's female and you need the certain numbers in the boardroom, but on the other hand, these women that were pushed past where they sort of belonged, for lack of a better term, had an intense imposter complex, and they were incredibly insecure. So they sabotaged any woman they felt as a threat. So it's not perfect, but I still support affirmative action, because, you know, one of the big successes of affirmative action is Barack Obama. And Barack Obama may not be the greatest president that that has ever existed. But he's certainly been a competent one in a difficult time. He's done some things right. He's done some things wrong. He got health care for a lot more people, and Obamacare's got problems in it. You know, the Affordable Care Act has issues, which I wish they'd fixed, but, you know, subsequent governments can fix the Affordable Care Act. They don't have to abolish the Affordable Care Act. They can build on it. Stand on the shoulders of giants, guys, for God's sakes. But he benefited from affirmative action. And the great thing about someone like Barack Obama, who benefited from affirmative action, is now his children don't need it. And it's almost like they have to start looking at affirmative action based on the schools that people attend. Like, okay, take some people from, you know, these lousy inner city public schools that have a desire to learn, put them in. What they started to do when I was in school is they were experimenting with basically doing a remedial year for students from some of the rough neighborhoods, because the reality is students aren't necessarily prepared going into university if they haven't gone to the better schools. And it shouldn't be, you know, universities under the current system are not prepared to do remedial work. It's up to you to stay current. But at the same time, they recognize that it's not the kids' fault that the parents couldn't afford to send them to private school. And so this is why problems, I am still a supporter of some form of affirmative action, because poverty still exists, and poverty is the big issue. And I know this is someone who is affected by it. My mother was an administrative assistant, and my father went through periods where he didn't pay child support. We didn't have any money. And did that impact my life? You bet your ass it did. And I mean, I think poverty is something we really need to start addressing, but as well, the idea of a visible difference does matter. And unless you've been affected by that, it's very hard to explain to people why it matters. And that's why these, you know, the cabinet visually representing Canadians is so important. Like Obama, like that whole hope and change thing that wasn't exactly as advertised, but it was a great idea. The idea that there is now gender parity with qualified people in cabinet, big emphasis on qualified people, shows people who are not white men in politics that the Canadian political system does want them, that it's not going to be an uphill battle. And why does this matter? Because anything you try to do to better yourself is going to be difficult. And it's going to be hard no matter what you choose. We are living in a very difficult age job-wise. Most people want to use their energy and their passion wisely, productively. And choosing places that have been advertised to be an uphill battle just isn't a smart use of your energy. And, you know, we had issues not so long ago where there were a lot of scandals involving sexual harassment on Parliament Hill in Ottawa, our capital. And this became a concern because, you know, the women who have been around since the 1980s, they can speak very eloquently about why this matters and why having that feeling that you were, you know, seen as meat by some of these guys and you were fair game for things like that, that you got to be made of really, really strong stuff. And that means you get the toughest people, not necessarily the smartest people, the most informed people. But the other question I was asked regarding this was the news today about the appointment of Rona Ambrose, that was that thing you saw when I skipped by it, as the interim Conservative leader. And the idea that there were all these women running for the nomination and she got the nomination. So equal amount of women run, she got the nomination. First of all, I have a request, guys. If you're going to ask me a question, if you want my input on something, don't just link me to someone else's tweet and say, thoughts? I need context. These are big topics. I need to know what you're looking for from me. Please don't waste my time. I am crazy busy. I do not have time to try to read the tea leaves and what you want from me. And it is Twitter. People jump on the bandwagon and gang up and freak out. It's not the place to be vague. So please do not just link me to something and say thoughts. I'm not Siri. I'm not Cortana. I'm not your personal information assistant. These are my professional opinions. And by all rights, I should be charging money for this level of analysis for things. I'm doing this. I'm providing this analysis free of cost on the internet if you watch a commercial, because I want people to learn. I believe that people care. And I want people who care to be able to have the access to information based on my own history that I went through. But please respect my time, and please respect the fact that my knowledge is worth something and has cost me a lot of time, energy, and even money to amass. And just, if you have a specific question, ask a specific question. Don't just ask me to weigh in on a tweet. Please, I really appreciate that. But this question about Rona Ambrose, here's the thing. Interim conservative leader means that people are running to be a stand-in. This position is a caretaker job. One of the requirements is that the interim leader does not run for the permanent leadership job. So, yay, the Conservative Party had gender parity for people looking for a temp job. And they trumpeted this as some sort of big diversity thing, and I'm sitting here going, oh God, this is why this party does not get it. This is why the party does not get it. It's not the same as, you know, for example, Elizabeth May being the leader of the Green Party, or for people in the US, Hillary Clinton being the, you know, the front runner right now. You know, I won't say she's going to be the nominee because Bernie, but, you know, it's not the same. It's a temp job. It's a temporary position. Okay, where is it? You know, it's all the lip service, the leader of the opposition and everything like that. But it's an interim leader. The thing I found very interesting is that this leader was chosen, and Rona Ambrose is a different kind of leader than the Conservatives have had historically, and it was done through a preferential ballot process. And this is very interesting because this is one of the potentials for our electoral reform campaign promise that the Liberals made, that Justin Trudeau made, that we're going to change first past the post to something, whether it's mixed member proportional or a preferential ballot. Personally, I'm more in favor of preferential ballots as opposed to mixed proportional, because preferential ballots solve the problem of wedge candidates, divisive candidates, managing to just, you know, squeak out that 30% of the vote enough to get elected because, okay, they alienate 2/3 of the population, a third loves them, and those are, you know, voters that go vote because they're pissed off enough. And you know, the preferential ballot system is significant in that way because it means there's benefit to being someone's second choice. And I like that. Mixed proportional I don't like, simply because it stacks government. It makes government too big. And I think government should be as big as it has to be and no bigger. And I'm saying this as a liberal. I'm saying this as a progressive. I think government has a place in people's lives. I don't think government should just get out of the way, but I don't think government should be, you know, a 100-inch TV in a 6-foot room. You know, that's too much government is too much government, and that's what I think mixed proportional will do. Also, those additional seats, those additional parliamentary seats, members of parliament, are accountable to no one but their party. Basically, there's a list, and based on popular vote, the party is given a certain amount of extra seats based to balance out what they got in the popular vote versus what it's a complicated system, and it seems very fair on paper, but the big problem is that it's not representative. These members of parliament are accountable to no one but their party, and I don't trust any politician that doesn't have a constituency that can yell at them. And so this is something we're facing in Canada, and so I think that is a significant part of Rona Ambrose's selection as interim Conservative leader. Whether I think this is a big diversity thing or a big move, I don't think so. One of the things I have about the thing about Rona Ambrose is she's had 8 different cabinet posts since 2006, meaning she was moved around a lot. She was shuffled, and that, you know, she was not stellar on any file she had. And I think she's perfect as an interim leader in that way, because she is competent in a lot of things, exceptional in none of them. She can hold her own. She's experienced, but, you know, when you hold 8 different cabinet positions in 10 years, it means you didn't set the world on fire in any of them. And that's something to consider. Now, some would say the Conservatives are sort of guilty of affirmative action here, that you're keeping this woman there because you want to show that Conservatives support women. And I have a bit of an issue with the artificiality of that, because I know plenty of Conservative women who can hold their own. And, you know, watch the interview with Ash Shao that was up this week. Perfect example right there. But those are signs of something sort of amiss. So I was asked about this. That's my answer. I don't know what that person was looking for, because all I got was a link to a tweet and thoughts. So, and I say these guys, you need to understand, okay? I say things this way as sort of a humorous, it is mockery to an extent, but it's having fun with people. It's not having fun at people. There's 2 things going on this channel that I feel people need to understand, and this is the last point I'll make for the day. First of all, there are thousands of you and one of me. So when people start to gang up, and I don't care if it's 3 people or 300 people, when people start to gang up, I go, snarl, because I have to keep order, okay? Because it's not just me. It's not just me. I don't give a crap if people dogpile me every single day. It doesn't matter. It's just noise. As long as I don't leave the house with my Twitter on, it doesn't affect my bandwidth because I've got it hooked to Wi-Fi. But it does affect people who watch my YouTube channel, and they're foolish enough to read the comments. Although it's been getting better up until this freaking video. I don't know what happened recently, but they see this and they go, wow, you take so much crap. I could never do what you do. And I'm like, oh God, these are smart, articulate people with good ideas, and they're too afraid of the mob to make their voice heard. No. And that's why when this stuff starts, when people won't drop something past its logical point, for instance, when we have facts, stop dealing in hypotheticals, okay? I'm not here to validate you in that way. I'm not here to tell you you're a special snowflake and you have good ideas and nice try. Oh, you tried so hard. Good for you. You know, that's not what I'm here for. Hire a psychiatrist and pay them for that. If there are facts, we're going to deal with facts, because facts are great. There's so many things I deal with on this channel that we don't have good data. Then when I get data, I'm like, nom, 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 data, it's delicious, nom, nom, nom. But the other thing you'll notice is that I don't just make fun of other people. I make fun of myself a lot. And that's because I think we have to sort of keep humor. And remember, I've got a comedy background, guys. I produced and starred in a comedy show. And that stand-up instinct with hecklers never quite dies. You know, that live host thing, that when somebody starts distracting from your show, you go whack. There's certain things you say to just shut them down because they're a distraction. They're wasting time. People didn't come to see them, drunk guy in the audience or drunk woman in the audience. They're there to see the people on stage. And when someone starts hijacking a conversation, it's a natural instinct for a comedian or a host to just kill that dead really fast so we can get on with the show. It's nothing personal, okay? It's just housekeeping. But I also make fun of myself a lot because I don't want to deal with people who can't admit they're wrong, who can't look at themselves and be self-aware, who can't go, yeah, I didn't think that through, or, you know, even better, well, that was my opinion, and then I got new information, and so I changed my opinion. Those are the people I want to talk to. People who continue to hang on to an outdated opinion, like, for instance, women make less money than men because they choose to. That's been completely refuted. It has been refuted multiple times, and people in the know who aren't political operatives, there's consensus on this. But I have this repeated to me on the internet every time the idea of gender parity or the, you know, the disputed wage gap comes up. You're pretty much the flat earthers of gender theory if you talk about that. It's not the case. Now, unfortunately, the good studies that have said it's not the case are in books and not on the internet. So when people go, link, proof, you know, again, that's like the debate equivalent of tits or GTFO. Like, no, some things are in books and they cannot be linked to, or they're in journals behind a paywall. And so no, unfortunately, I can't link you to that. I am an expert. You know, people have accused me of lying a lot of times, and there's always been proof that no, I wasn't lying. There might have been a misunderstanding, but integrity is important to me. Consistency is important to me. And the reason I don't adopt personas, the reason that you guys will get different sides of me, but it's always going to be me. Okay, I'm not going to play characters in this channel, is because trust is important. For that very reason, that when I give you a statistic, or when I say, guys, this is consensus in thought, in this sphere, people take me at my word. Because it's just quicker. It's just quicker and more, it's just easier. Part of what I do is try to make difficult concepts simpler so the regular people can understand it in a fairly short amount of time and get on with their day. And I can't do that if I have to cite studies and start talking like an academic. Because guess what? An academic has to take 500 pages to say something I can do in 5 minutes. Because they have to cite, and because they have to use academic ease, and because of all this stuff. You guys don't need that. You guys just need good quality information from a trusted source. That's it. You don't have to read a 30-page study. You need people who are earning money to do that are honest with you, that don't bullshit. And I understand a lot of people feel like they can't trust the people that are supposed to do that. And I get that. That is why I have not turned my back on the ethics and games journalism people. Because if you don't trust the press, you don't trust the press. All I can do is be a reliable source. And does that mean I'll never make a mistake? No, it doesn't mean that. Everybody makes a mistake. But I will give you what I believe to be I will give you the best information I have at a given time. And I can't read anything, and I can't, I can't be everywhere. I get behind on some things, or I don't see a study. I'm not on the board at Harvard or anything like that. I do the best I can. But what you're going to get from me is something that's authentic. It will not be right, but it'll be authentic. And so yeah, I do take real exception when people don't accept the merits of what I bring to the table. And that's for various reasons what a lot of people do. And when you start giving me hypotheticals when I'm presenting you with facts, you're not dealing in a meritocracy. And You can't argue merit only when you're not dealing with the merits of the situation at hand. And that's why I decided to stop respecting that conversation, because I didn't think it was something worthy of respect. And that's authentic. That's about as authentic as you can get. When someone says, yeah, I was disrespectful because I didn't respect your argument. I don't know you as a person, but I didn't respect the approach you were taking. I found the approach disrespectful. Some people may say it's civil, but you know as well as I do that people can be sitting there and having a very lovely conversation, and it's all prim and proper and civil, because civil matters more than authentic or honest or even especially caring for the other person. It just has to be civil. It has to be said in an even tone and with a smile and with proper posture. But they can be ready to shank you in the back, and everybody knows what they're doing, but you can't retaliate because they were civil. Fuck that.